to another awesome Attollo Professional Development Series episode, a very special one where I am now on the left side of the set, but also because we have a wonderful guest with us. So I would love if everybody in the studio today could help me welcome Dr. Amber Sessoms, the founder and chief visionary officer of Natural Inclination.
Thanks for having me.
Yes,
and
thank you so much.
I appreciate you switching sides because I was joking, but I was somewhat serious about.
There's always
but then you
truth in
can't see
jest.
my haircut.
That's a very important part.
I'm at Corso Cutting Edge.
Visuals are very important to us here,
Yes,
so
I appreciate it.
all for you. So a light traditional opening question I like to ask guests is, where are you from and what were some of your hobbies growing up?
Oh,
Help us get to know you.
Middletown, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So I have to say Middletown, Pennsylvania because most people try to say, I think there's a New Jersey or there's a Delaware.
Okay.
I'll usually say TMI, but depending on how old you are, it'll be, people are like, oh, I'm sorry. They think it's too much information.
Yes.
But I mean, 3 Mile Island, if you've seen the recent documentary,
Yeah.
it will explain kind of how our town is. And most people will joke and say we glow at night.
Yes.
Everyone in the film that looks like me is literally related to me.
Okay.
So I grew up in a very homogenous town. So I was very few people that looked like me other than my relatives.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the hobbies, because I have siblings, but I was raised by my grandparents, so I was the only child. I would see, I'm aging myself, the JCPenney catalog.
Okay.
And plan out the thing was like this thick.
Yeah.
And plan out my whole entire life, it was kind of my way to decompress and create another world. So
I clipped out the Kohl's Cash from now on again. I get it.
And I would design my own fashion. So I would do all those kind of things I loved. I was really artistic when I was younger, and then I got away from it in terms of illustration when I got older.
Gotcha. Wonderful.
Those are my favorite things to do.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
So, taking us back to your origin story, your early identity, I'd love to chat about what that experience was like growing up in Middletown there. So, based on your origin story, published information says that you've described growing up as a little black girl in a mostly white town, learning fluency in invisibility before having a language for it. Mm-hmm. So I really want to unpack what that means before we move further in the interview. Can you take us back to some of those experiences? What did it feel like to navigate those spaces as a child?
Yeah, the invisibility, I don't think I realized or had the language for it, right, until I got older, but it's a very felt sense. So again, the people that look like me, I was like, they're my relatives, I could relate, but there is something when you're in a homogenous area and there's not a relationship with people that look like me, so they make assumptions, or they think that I know all the answers. And I was just writing about this or talking with Emma about this and saying, I remember being in class, I didn't ever social studies or history because what I thought was I was very monolithic. There was not a really expansive view of what I looked like. And I remember one time in sociology, the teacher said, Amber knows everything about that, right? And I'm like, so then it's twofold. It's it's like you can be hyper visible and invisible at the same time. Okay. So I was always navigating both of those things, like when I can show up and when I could show up, it was to be the trope, be the stereotype. Oh, Amber can sing, Amber can dance. Okay. So much so that we had I forget what reunion it was, and I was joking with my husband saying, every dance they would play the music and have me dance. They did it at the reunion. So much so, that was literally, so those kind of things still plagued me. And it wasn't ever that you could be intelligent, and I very much was. So I was in AP classes, and it was always this, she's smart for a black girl type of thing, or she's pretty for a black girl. So those things that I had to really learn early on, I'm not the exception to the rule. It's people's narrow view of me. So that's what I had to really instill in myself, and my family helped to do that. Okay. But that was part of the challenges.
Sure, yeah. So with those experiences, do you think that there was a turning point or a moment where you started to find that language and maybe talk about what those experiences were shaping in you? Those messages being reinforced. When did that language start to evolve?
You know what? So I have this pen on. And it's an elephant because my forever mentor, Dr. Rita Smith-Waddell, it was her because she was my first person of color, first black woman ever educator. Okay. So it took me until undergrad and college at Millersville.
Wow.
And so for me I think it was maybe my second semester. Okay. And I'm seeing this woman who's unapologetically her, and I'm like, girl, why are you shrinking? Right? Just be your awkward self. And so that really helped me I was an African American Studies minor. Okay. So that's where I started developing the language, and then continuing on to my doctoral program where I could see that black feminist thought, black feminist epistemology, and have the language for what I was experiencing. I was like, there's actual theory behind this. That was transformative.
Yeah. I heard a term in there, shrinking. I want to talk about that a little bit further too. Did this realization or finding this language help you come to the pathway of natural inclination, or like how did that foundation shape that pathway for you?
Yeah, I think so. When I think about your natural inclination, I think so much you shrink yourself, it's self-betrayal, really.
Okay.
Right? So the world is going to tell you who you should be. So I kind of described that earlier about, oh, you're a black girl, you belong here. Oh, you're fast because you're a black girl. Or
someone telling you who you are.
And I'm like, well, I work hard for it, and like it's just a natural, it runs in my family. So I had to learn the language of the tropes and narratives, and then also thinking about what does that look like and how I shape it. So me shrinking and trying to fit in versus, but I really like this thing and there's not really a space for me. What does that look like? And then going back and tracing that back to my childhood with the awe and wonder. And that's why I love so much working with students, because they are unapologetically who they are.
Yeah.
And we lose that as we get older because the world tells us how we have to show up, how we have to adult. And the minute that we can lose that and start getting back to the truest essence of ourselves is when we come alive. So that's what I'm really looking for, is like, I shrink myself, I box myself in. And what happens when I can be expansive? And when I can be my full self? Something as simple as me getting my septum pierced. Right? I remember going and doing a keynote and I flipped it up because I had it and I was like, oh, this is not professional.
Right.
And then I was like, why am I doing that? And I remember being somewhere else and the professional said, she had her septum pierced, so I started wearing it down. And someone as simple as, I had mine pierced too, I didn't know I could wear it.
Yeah.
And thinking about the narrative was, my mom was so mad. She said, people aren't going to take you seriously.
Yes.
And I was like, they will.
Piercings, tattoos, hair color.
It's like, how do I show up as myself?
Yeah.
And then it gives people permission to do the same.
I love that. Yeah. Amazing. Sometimes being unapologetically yourself has to do with allowing change in your life, I would say. And I think that takes us back to your academic path a little bit at Millersville. You are not the first and you are not the last to be in this podcast who have changed their major in undergrad. So you started with a love of organic chemistry before taking a pivot on your way to psychology. Tell us a little bit about what happened with that pivot, maybe what sparked that curiosity there or the confidence to change.
I don't think many people know this part of my journey, because I'm very open about talking about my biological mother and the abandonment that I experienced at 4. My grandparents raising me, but I experienced a lot of harm in college. I was in a really abusive relationship. So started out as, biochem, and I got to the point where I remember standing outside the building and I had to go to cell biology class, and I had a panic attack.
Oh, wow. And
I dropped out of school. So I was, a track athlete, I did all the things, and I left school. And I had, I want to say, a 1.65 GPA.
Wow.
Because middle semester, those classes turned to Fs, Ds. So I came back, I think I had 4 Fs, 2 Ds, something to that regard. So I came back actually with a 1-year-old baby, almost 2 years later. And I did not know this until a couple years before Rita died, because I never thought about it. I was like, how did I get from there to there?
Right.
But this is why it's so important to have people that see you fully and believe in you. So when I was in my lowest, Rita would always say, when are you coming back to school? And I was like, Rita, I don't have the money. Like, I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And she advocated for me to get in the psychology program. Because who would accept me with that GPA? Right? So that was really how I became on that path. And it was a perfect marriage for me, because it helped me make sense of my own experience. And we often joke in psychology that we get into the field because we're trying to figure out all our own trauma. But it really helped me, like family systems, all the things helped me name it. But she saw something in me and saw how I thought. And she was like, I know this woman is brilliant. She's just going through a really hard time. And she advocated me. And so many times we're just I fit the narrative. And I could just be pushed aside, and she stayed on me and believed in me.
Suddenly you start believing all of that messaging people are saying about you, like, oh, maybe I'm not the smart person, and proving everybody wrong. So there's a lot of pressure
following
there.
like the path of like, oh, you're just like your mother. I heard that a lot. Like, I remember a so-called friend called me. He's like, oh, I didn't think you wanted to be like your mother. You're just like your mother.
That's painful to hear.
And then like, how do you take that and say that's what you think? But it's not like, I think what I'm trying to live my life is like, I don't want to be living my life against or in spite of. Right, so I'm trying to get in that flow of like, there's things and circumstances. I've had a lot of death and compounded grief the last couple of months. How do you continue to walk your purposeful path even when you have all these things that happen? And it's hard, but if you can stay focused and be true to yourself, I think it's a lot easier to continue to navigate. And it doesn't stray you too much. I took some time off, right? Because there's a lot of grief, but I can still come back to the path and say, this is where I come alive, and this is what fulfills me and helps and supports other people.
It's really interesting you say not in spite of as the language there, because I feel like the messaging I always received growing up was do things in spite of people and prove them wrong and prove your worth. And so where do you think that shift in mindset kind of came from? for you?
I think I realized how much energy it was taking. But you think of how we talked before the camera, it was like,
Sure.
anger and all those things. And I joke about, like, that's my initial response, but when I get underneath it, I know what it is.
Yeah, dig into those feelings
Right,
a little
but
bit.
I think it's so much energy to live my life disproving people.
That's true, yeah.
And when I usually tell my story, people are like, oh my gosh, it's so amazing, you should tell more of that. And I'm like, I also don't want it to be my whole entire experience as my trauma. There's so much richness and joy in my life. And because of my heritage and because of being African American, like, there is a lot of trauma, but there's so much joy, innovation, creativity that we have within our culture. So I don't ever want to get stuck in, I'm doing this in spite of you.
Yeah.
Again, if I can get back to my truest self, this is just naturally who I am, just naturally what I do. So how do I do more of that in my life than fighting against what people think?
Yeah, that's really special for us to hear here at Attollo, because one of the messages we tell our students during their initial recruit process is, I am more. And so they do a chant.
You got that on a t-shirt?
I think we do. We actually have some, we have some merch that says, I am
Your merch
more.
is on point.
Yes, special thanks to our marketing team. They're amazing here. But yes, we tell our students, I am more, because you're not just your trauma, you're not just your pain, and people have these multifaceted experiences. And so to hear that from an extended life path and learning that in college and learning it in the professional field, I think will help a lot of our scholars down the line. Thank you for sharing that. So moving on past your bachelor's, you also earned your master's degree from Millersville as well. And then you went further to earn your doctorate in lifelong learning and adult education at Penn State.
Yes.
Very impressive. So tell us about what that doctoral work kind of asked of you. Tell us about what that experience was like. Beyond the slog of getting the doctorate,
Yeah.
We can talk more on a conceptual level, perhaps. How did it maybe change the way you saw yourself engaging with academia, or maybe as a leader, taking that with you post-doctorate maybe?
Yeah, I think what came to mind when you said that, I remember sitting in class. Again, I was the only one in my program.
Okay.
Which isn't surprising when you think about, where we are in academia in terms of Black womanhood, even though we're the highest educated in the country, right? But thinking about, I was the only one in my program. I remember sitting in class and my professor was saying something about, you're brilliant. And in middle class, I'm like, are you just saying that because I'm Black? And it was like,
and there's crickets.
Right, and I'm like, part of it was like a knee-jerk, like people are always surprised by that. But she meant it authentically, but I just wanted to make sure, because my measuring stick has never been the same measuring stick. It's been compared to other Black people. And I'm like, where am I across the board? So when she said that, and that was a very engaging conversation we had to have in the class. But again, what I learned from that experience is the program is very much focused on it was informal education.
Okay.
So you think about pedagogy with students and young people, and then andragogy in adulthood. So with students, we have the same model like that I had in the 80s. We're trying to move from that, because the students will be like, I need time to talk in class. And teachers are still very much, I got to stick to the curriculum, I have to do it like this. It's open head, insert knowledge, old school mentality. And when adult education is very much, you are the owner of your own experience. You are also a knowledge holder.
Okay.
And so that was a big shift for me in that old traditional model, saying that's not the way that we need to go.
The agency.
And also thinking about how much wisdom is within our communities, that we as intellectuals think that we have all the answers, because I read all the books and I have all the degrees. And that is very harmful. So I think that is really what helped me to start shifting the language and start centering people's lived experience as a form of wisdom.
Wow. I feel like oftentimes when I ask people about their experiences with their PhD programs, they fall into typically one of two camps. One is pursuing it because they want to reinforce ideas and beliefs that they already have, and they maybe want to deepen their understanding. And then the second camp of people want to challenge beliefs that they have and maybe want to explore concepts in new ways. If you had to designate yourself into maybe one of those categories, what do you think that doctoral program did for you?
It definitely challenged me, but I will say probably the thing that comes up for me is that it gave me the language I didn't have before. So part of the informal education is that you are learning in everyday discourse. So part of my programming, I did critical media literacy.
Okay.
So much that we learn from the media.
Media literacy, yay!
Yes, like we learn from just, my body is read as text. So when I walk in a room, you have an assumption about me just based off my shaved head, septum, like whatever
Lightning
that is.
speed information.
Instant, and like our brains naturally have to do that. So I think it was a lot for me. One, that I am constantly curious. One of my biggest values is curiosity, and I call myself a perpetual toddler.
Okay.
So I always want to learn. I don't think I ever set out to be like, I'm going to get a terminal degree, but it created a pathway for me. But it definitely is, I'm always up to be challenged and to stretch and grow, because the minute, we hear that all the time, right? The minute you stop learning and growing, you're dead.
Yes.
And that could be physically, but it's also just like spiritually. Like you're not trying to learn and absorb anything else.
Or if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room.
The wrong room,
Yeah. Thinking about pedagogy beyond just academia or readings or texts or things like that, you've described your work in the past currently as coming not through theory but through survival. That's a powerful, punchy quote there. Talk to us a little bit about what you mean by that. Why does it matter that the people doing this work have lived it and not just studied it?
Right, so again, it goes back to academia, and part of, in your dissertation, you get to write reflections at the end, and so much of our doctoral work and in lifelong learning and education is going against the grain, or really challenging assumptions and beliefs. That is the whole like premise of the program. And so in the end, I said, I did all this work for what? Like, we're talking about getting away from that traditional model. This thing almost killed me. Now, granted, I was working full time and had another child, like got pregnant in the program, so that didn't help either. But those kind of things, like getting away from that, and you're going to have to help me. See, this is also real. I'll be real. I'm 45, and perimenopausal brain is real. Okay. So I forgot your question.
That is A-okay. I just wanted to talk about, let me see where I am.
This is so real. No, they don't have it sometimes in the keynote. Usually I can play it off in the keynote, but
and this
I'm
is
like,
how we know
lost
this is a real conversation, and it's
real.
Not super scripted,
and one
guys.
thing I'm going to be real.
No, you're good. So we were chatting about text as not being the end-all be-all and theory not being the end-all be-all, and the importance of people living their experiences and not just studying it.
Right. Yeah. There's so much that you miss out on if you don't live it. Again, it's not looking at the wisdom of the people that have lived the experience. So I see this a lot in intergenerational work, where you'll see what I hear from older adults who have lived it. They've, laid the groundwork, is that they feel like younger people are disrespecting them. And sometimes it can come across like that for younger people. They'll say, oh, that's not how you do it anymore, or they don't honor the work that they've already done. And then older people can look at younger people and be like, you don't know anything, like you haven't lived yet. And I don't believe in that, because there's a lot of living I did, from a very early age, and there's a lot of wisdom. So the work that I do with students particularly is honoring their wisdom and helping them get the language for it. But we can't sit, because when you're in academia, there's a lot of data research. You can create your own data story, right? Depends on who's the holder of that. You can create and narrate your own. You can twist those numbers around. You can make it be what you want it to be.
That's true.
And that's why I love qualitative research, and I did not know qualitative research, didn't really embed myself in it until my doctorate program, because everything in psychology is quantitative.
Yes.
But you can't have thick, rich information. You can't make meaning unless you actually hear from the people.
Yeah.
So that's the meaning for me, is why I love talking to people. And you're giving me a gift, because I'm always saying the greatest gift you can give someone is holding space for them. And I'm usually the one doing that. So this is very different for me, that I'm on the opposite side of that, but there's something special about honoring people's lived experience and hearing from them in their most authentic voice, behind theory, behind all the stuff that we learn, because a lot of times that can be thrown out the window. Think about it in medicine. It's, it's a practice. And I remember my grandmother was really sick, and they were like, this does not work, this medication does not work on people her age. And I said, well, if she's going to die, try the medication. What do we have to lose? Lo and behold, the medicine worked. So, we can get really rigid in our thinking, because we did all the study, but there's nuance, there's exceptions to everything.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit of stigma against qualitative research versus quantitative research.
Listen, when I say that to my academic friends, they're like,
yes.
Oh, qualitative, that's cute.
Yeah, it's like telling someone you like reading fiction versus nonfiction, and they're like, but are you really learning anything?
Right.
Media literacy, let's get it back.
I love it.
So all of these lived experiences that you have had and the academic spaces that you've inhabited, it sounds like you do a lot of work about holding space for other people. We just talked about that. How do you think that your personal story, and this can be either your growing up, your experience in those academic spaces, do you think that that impacts the way that you hold space for other people? Definitely.
I think you talk about inner child work.
Sure.
And so much so, I have a podcast with my 11-year-old.
Yes.
And I talk about, I'm looking at little Amber, I'm reclaiming little Amber. So I think about little Amber at Emma's age and younger, felt so badly about her skin color and her hair. So much so that I did not go outside in the summer. I would only go outside in the winter. And I remember my Aunt Jerry saying, that girl does not go outside in the summer, because I did not want to get darker.
Yeah.
Because I was teased and called Black Amber and things like that. And then my youngest had an experience where someone said something about her skin color in first grade. She was like, I have beautiful brown skin, I have beautiful hair.
In first grade?
First grade.
Oh my gosh.
Called a meeting with the counselor, all the things. And so it was like, yes, this is it, because that's a lie that can take root in you. And for me, it took root, and it took me so long to unlearn that. And for her, it didn't even penetrate, right? Even in preschool, someone didn't want to hold her friend's hand. And she was like, and that really disturbed her. She didn't understand, so we talked about it.
Yeah.
But having those open conversations, I think, are really changing. But it's reclaiming that voice that was not allowed to speak, even though I would, because that's just me. I'm gonna say the thing, and I've said it my whole life. My family's like, Amber's always gonna say the thing. I do. But it was always, there was a silencing that happened with it. And so I got curious about that when I was young. I was like, I know I'm making sense.
Yes.
I know what I'm saying is true, but I was dismissed. And so a lot of my work, even if you're young or you're old, is like so many people from the margins are dismissed, they're silenced, and I want to amplify your voice because there's so much wisdom there. So what does it look like to just hold space? Because the greatest harm, the greatest thing is holding space. The greatest harm is silencing someone. So when they tell their story, you don't believe them. So what does it look like to flip that and say, I hear you, I honor what you have to say? It changes people. So I'm trying to do more of that work. The silencing has caused so much harm. How do I just honor, as you fumble through it, whatever that is, but there's wisdom in there, you have to start trusting yourself.
I love that. And that's why I love this part of my job so much, because I get to just ask questions. And that's
what I want to do all day. Just ask questions.
I love learning about new people and just letting them talk about themselves, which some people don't want to talk about themselves, but here we are. Your podcast co-host is Emma, your daughter, who is 11. It's called Living in 3D Power. I'd love to chat about that a little bit, about what made you decide to do that together.
Yeah, I think we started January 2025 on a whim. One day I was like, hey, Emma, do you want to sit down and like actually film our conversations? And if I'm honest, that time was a really heavy time for me. And so I was just trying to figure out, what could I do to get out of this funk? And there's something about children that just bring out, like the awe and wonder that they have, it kind of makes you take root of what you had inside yourself that you allowed to go dormant. And it's been such a beautiful experience talking to her. I will say, out of all three of our girls, so I have a 23, 17, and 11-year-old. I would not recommend having your kids like all 6 years apart. It's ridiculous.
Big spread.
We finally got out of the elementary building since 2008. The youngest is now, Emma's going to middle school, but it was just really having conversations and also showing the world how sometimes we'll say that's not appropriate for children to talk about. They might not have the language, or we don't even, like, so again, from my experience as being a child, I knew it was happening and I could name it, but it made the adults around me uncomfortable. And so that was the thing that I had to really focus on, is how do I give her the space to, if she has to call me in, if she wants to talk about hard things in an age appropriate way, but it's still, they're living it, and we just have to give them the space to actually name it. And how do we, especially me being a school psychologist, how do we honor what they have to say? Because again, it's always the adult knows everything. And I remember one time being in a professional development, and a teacher was saying, I have to earn the students' respect. And one of the seasoned teachers was like, no, I get respect because
I command respect.
And I'm like, these kids are not
good luck with that right now.
That's not going to work. And that's how I felt as a kid, and it didn't make sense. It was like, stay quiet, stay in a child's place. And that's not working for our youth of today. It's just not.
And asking questions is important.
It's so important.
Having the comfortability to ask questions to someone is important. I feel like it's a really unique and special experience to share a podcast stage with an 11-year-old. So is there something that experience with her and her age has taught you during that process?
That's the whole thing. She's teaching me all the time, and she's like, Mommy, just do it. So she's very like Nike in that regard. Like, don't sit on that idea, just do it. So she does really help me to confront some things. And we're working on curiosity cards. So people have conversation cards. But what I'm really trying to model is, how do we really listen? And how do we, so we have this reciprocal witnessing piece. So that's a part of my research, is looking at, I'm learning from you. What am I actually learning? And can I actually tell you? And honor that. And a lot of part of my work is, when people hold space for each other, like, I want them to be able to say, I see something in you that you might not see in yourself, and that's such a gift. So we talk about this thing, but I heard you say, or I'm curious about this, or the story I'm hearing behind that is. So we probe, like, we don't just answer the question. We go deeper, and that has been really beautiful. And she has something she calls chicken nugget wisdom.
Chicken nugget wisdom.
No sauce needed. So, but sometimes she'll be like, oh, I'm like, so I'll ask her every episode, Emma, what's your chicken nugget wisdom? And sometimes it's wisdom or it's a challenge. And what I love about that is that I'm centering her and saying, you have wisdom, and I'm here to honor whatever comes up for you. What do you have to say to trust yourself? And so I think that's really beautiful, because a lot of times, again, in schools in particular, what I hear from students is the teachers don't want to hear what I have to say. And the teachers will say, I'm scared what they have to say. I don't know if I can manage it. So then we silence kids in that way. And the only time they're allowed to speak is if someone like me comes in, or there's a rupture in the school, and then they'll say, oh, now we want to hear from the kids, but it can be very performative. So a lot of my research with Emma, we actually did a live, we actually presented at our national conference. And we did a paper on this about how we can be really performative with student voice.
Okay.
But what does it look like in schools if we really honor what they have to say? Because kids will say, even students it's like, well, I said what I had to say, but I don't really feel like you were listening.
Yeah.
Because you had the solution, it doesn't really change my lived experience. It doesn't change how I can interact in the community.
Asking questions just to ask questions and not to listen. Yeah.
It is, and it's like checkbox on to the next thing, and that's really harmful.
I asked you, yeah.
Right, or the surveys that we do with adults.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And then they're never to be seen again, right? Because they're like, oh, I didn't like those results.
I guess that went into a void somewhere, yeah.
Because we don't want to get real about what we need to change.
Sure.
So children are going to help you. They're going to be your greatest mirror if you're willing to do that work. But I'm finding that's hard. A lot of people don't want to do that work because it brings up some deep-seated beliefs about themselves or insecurities or shame. And there's no shame in it. It is what it is. Can I honor what's coming up for me? Can I look at you as a mirror and say, whew, I'm growing, and it's a beautiful thing to grow and learn.
I like that, looking at you as a mirror. I think that's really important language.
Emma's like the biggest reflection. Sometimes I'm like, okay, now you're still 11. Like,
no, yeah.
Like I can still be very much my mom. Like, all right, I'm like 1 foot millennial. Like, I'm Gen X, like millennial, and I'm like, girl, like you still 11.
Yeah.
Watch your tone. Right.
Hey, that circles back to a wonderful conversation I actually had with an Attollo intern over the summer. Her name's Jakira. Shout out Jakira. We would talk often about educational theory in terms of mirrors and windows.
Yes.
And seeing yourself represented in educational spaces, in your parents, and being someone that can reflect experiences back to you, but also open up a window to different experiences. That sounds like that's a lot of the work that you're doing on your podcast with your daughter. So that sounds really
very
wonderful.
intentional, but also just very organic. I mean, we recorded this week, and she ran off the camera and got her bass and started playing the bass. And then she ran and got her acoustic guitar and started singing. She usually sings on key, but she sang really off key, but it was hilarious. And it was all about, the whole episode was about coming alive. And she's like, please, mommy, let me get, and it's like those kind of things. It's like, can we give ourselves permission to be silly? We think she talks about adults becoming robots.
Yeah.
And
where's the fun? Yeah.
Where's the fun, and how do we reclaim that and bring that joy? Really is the root of that back into our lives, because it's always within us. We just don't tap into it.
We ended our last podcast episode with a dance party button, and I think that was a wonderful way to end the episode. It just disrupted the routine a little bit. It was really great to add that fun back in the office.
You have to.
So that's great. Perfect. With your podcast, we mentioned the name a little bit earlier, so I do want to talk about those 3D power tools, because I think that's a really important piece of what your work is doing. So you've described those 3D power tools as a framework in your signature approach. That framework is built around 3 words: discover, discern, and devote. Can you walk us through each of those Ds and what they mean in practice a little bit, so we can dig into that?
Yeah. And again, like everything is a reclamation. So I think back, we had stories before we were even born. So I think about Gay Hendricks' work. So if you ever read The Big Leap, he talks about that, his story and his narrative coming from shame. And we're all born into stories from our families, from our place of origin, and we have to unlearn a lot of those stories. Some of the stories, right, me being an overachiever, overcompensating, benefited me. I got my doctoral degree, right? But what did it cost me?
Yeah.
And so some of the stories we can take with us. We maybe have to modify and redo them, and some of those we need to just get rid of. And so a lot of that first part is, what stories did I come into? What did I believe about myself and how I have to show up in the world? And what do I need to let go of? How do I write a new story about myself? So that's the first part when you think about looking at what am I thinking about and discovering myself.
Sure.
A lot of the work and what I find from my trauma is I'm always really outward focusing, and if I can just manage everything around me, I can figure out everyone else and I'll be safe. And it doesn't leave me looking at my internal world. And that's one of your values, right? Or one of your pillars is looking. I was like, come on, Attollo.
We've got some 6,000 pillars in here.
So I think about like looking at your interior world is so important, and so much of our world is leaving us distracted intentionally so that we don't focus on our internal world. So that's so much of the work. You have to really dig into yourself and spend time with yourself and be still in a world that's constantly going to pull you.
Yeah.
How do you do that? It's hard, but you have to, if you want to do the real work and heal and get to your most authentic self, you have to do that work. So that's the first part. So there's a lot of discovering along the way, a lot of peeling back the layers, a lot of journey line work, a lot of seeing what narratives are attached to my peaks and valleys in my life, my highs and lows. And then we move to discernment, because now I'm like, okay, I learned some things. Those are not true. Those are lies I built into. What is the most true version of me? And that really ties to your values. So for me, looking at leaders and thinking about how are you aligned with your values? You see all the good values statements, right? A lot of organizations. So a lot of times I don't talk about what organizations I work with, because they bring me in because there's a lot of ruptures.
Right.
So I can't be like, I'm working with X organization because, right? So sometimes it's harm reduction. It's really healing work. And what I find a lot of times is that it looks good on paper. It looks good on the walls of your building.
Yeah.
But when I talk to the people, and this is where my qualitative research comes in, they're not experiencing that.
Okay.
They're experiencing a lot of harm. What I've also found, particularly with nonprofits, is they will weaponize the mission and the values for the sake of, we're doing this on behalf of the people. Meanwhile, your employees are suffering.
Okay.
So that's not really being in line. So where does that show up in me, right? So when am I aligned, am I misaligned in my own values? And the more I can stay in alignment, the more true I can be to myself. And when do I know I'm out of alignment? What does that feel like in my body? For me, when my body had to literally wake me up out of my sleep. I didn't even know you could have panic attacks in your sleep.
Yeah.
I was waking up. And I remember
Quite
going
literally
to
rude awakening.
it is horrible. And my body was saying, you're out of alignment, right? You're not listening. So that's a part of being aligned. And then we look at devotion, because we get stuck in, oh, I learned this thing. Look at me, I'm better because I learned it. But what are you actually doing to change it? And what are you doing to change your community?
Going to therapy and telling your therapist, I already know everything that's wrong with me. Yeah.
So true. I have all the language, but you're still doing the same behaviors. There's no different outcome. So devotion is really about, how do I shift and build community with like-minded people to transform my area of the world.
Okay.
I can't transform the whole world, but what does that look like in practice? I have to do something. I can't just stay in the knowing.
I love that. All right, I think this is the time in our episode where I love to open up to a little bit of Q&A, because we have some wonderful audience members in our studio who would love to pick your brain about some topics. I want to make sure we have time to at least get a couple of questions in. We have some microphones we can distribute to our audience. So if anybody wants to be brave and be bold and ask our first question, let's start over here.
Hi, I was like writing questions because I was like, I have so many thoughts. I guess my question that I'll ask is, how did you know spiritually that you were going in the right direction when you started your own business? And what did that clarity feel like for you?
Oh, that's such a good question. Spiritually, and that's the part of being embodied, and again, being so disconnected, the world leaves us disconnected. Part of how it showed up for me, right, there was a tugging and a knowing, but it was people in my life that confirmed it for me. So much so that I remember the superintendent, she's like, why are you still here? And I'm like, I'm doing work on behalf of the kids.
Yeah.
She's like, you have outgrown this place, it's time.
Wow.
And I still didn't listen. And then so there were other people in my life saying the same thing, but I'm very hard-headed. So I felt it and it confirmed it. But for me, I get really curious about what people say, if it's in alignment. I do that internal work. But it was an internal knowing. And I've known that my whole life, again, tapping into what did I really experience as a child and like, how did I come alive? And then someone saying, there's something in you that I need you to really, I'm witnessing that in you. So that's such a gift to me. It's always someone saying it, and how did that feel in my spirit? Like, oh, that's aligned, did it not align? If it doesn't, maybe that's just imposter syndrome. I use air quotes because I don't believe in imposter syndrome.
Okay.
I believe it's a system that has built up, particularly for women or other marginalized people, to believe that you are less than, but the system has created that. It's a system issue, it's not a personal or individual issue. But that's, for me, it was like confirmation from other people. So, and I'm like, you hear that 3 times, I'm like, girl, how many more times can I tell you? That was God being like, I done told you. I'm hard-headed. Yes, that was such a great question. Thank you.
Awesome. We've got one back there.
Thank you for being here today. Mine was kind of off like your point of like the self-reflection and kind of seeing other people as mirrors and figuring out like, okay, maybe this isn't who you are, like who myself is, I guess. How do you not fall into that pit of like, okay, now I'm just lost in general. I don't know what is like actually me, who I'm like trying to be or whatever that might be, and then take you down that rabbit hole to actually never figuring out like who you truly are, who you truly want to be?
Yeah, I think I'm still on that journey, right? I'm 45, but I think it's a never-ending journey of getting really back to and reclaiming your most true self and coming home to yourself. Part of my work has been, right, I'm a school psychologist, so I found my own therapist. And I had other therapists who could not get with me, because I'm a lot. I know what you're doing, and I'm like, that's cute. I had to find someone, I came to the first session saying, I need you to bring it. I need you to bring it. And one of the first things she said was, this work you do with your clients, when are you gonna start doing it with yourself? And so for me, I need someone outside of my everyday experience that can really just reflect back to me and challenge me. That's my personality type. I need to be challenged in that way. So that for me was the big thing. Journaling has been really important for me. So there's a book called, I can't think of the author, but it is The Artist's Way. So she has these practices that you do every day. One of the first things you do before you even don't pick up your phone, don't do anything else, you do 3 minutes of stream of consciousness journaling. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's okay if I turn on like,
Yes, absolutely.
Especially, I've seen you out and about,
running into each other all the
over the
time.
place, right? How do you think about, as a professional, as a parent, as a just work-life balance versus work-life integration? What comes up when you hear that?
I don't think, so balance is really hard. I think that's where the shame comes from, because you don't do it all. So in my family, we were raised by women. And so something that seems unharmful is, I did it and I raised 4 kids on my own. So then I felt like I was not showing up. And don't shame me, y'all. I got a cleaning person because I was like, I can't do it. And the first, my mom was like, you work from home. Why do you need to get a cleaning person? But it's like, right. I don't want to do it. I can't clean those baseboards. I'm not doing it. And so it's something as simple as that, like buying back your time. What can you afford to do? And so I had to unlearn the narrative about how I had to show up and do everything, particularly as a woman, and how traditionally, I don't want to sound sexist, but traditionally it can be like, in my family, the man provides for the family. The woman does everything else. So they can focus on work, and then you have to, I just saw it, I think Oprah had that podcast on quiet quitting, and the woman's like, I'm Google for my family, I'm CEO. So unlearning that I don't have to do it all. So I don't believe in balance, but integration. It could ebb and flow. And then also building the skills in other people. And what I'm also learning is, because I'm very type A, I'm an Enneagram 8 as well, so I do it all. I'm a 98% 8, but I do it all. And why? Why? Because it was fear, like I wanted it done a certain way. Let them figure it out. Like, no one's ever going to grow or develop a skill if I'm always doing the work and I'm leaving myself burned out. So again, that's a values alignment where I want people to grow and stretch, but I'm not allowing people to do that. So I think the more that I'm learning to do that, me being integrated. So what I believe about integration is you're your fullest, most authentic self. Like integration, we talk about integrity, but integrated whole person. That's where I'm leaning into that and saying, like, where do I feel like I'm being mistreated, where I feel like I'm not loved, or what do I feel, and how do I bring more of that and nourish my needs? We talked about needs before we filmed. So that's where I'm looking at that the trope about how women have to show up is false, and it's leaving us burned out. And how do I call on my partner and be like, hey, I'm gonna need you to figure out this, like, I need some help. But also owning, I didn't allow that to happen because I thought I had to own it all. So I'm learning again those narratives I believed about how I had to show up as a woman and a wife and a mother. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I have a question about you're following your passion, obviously living in your purpose, all of those things, which is beautiful to see, and lots of people benefit from that. But I've been thinking a lot about the business of passion, meaning you have to make money. You have to, and there's a lot of people who are passionate about things who haven't found a way to quite get to the point where they can pursue their passion while taking care of their family and growing. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that journey's been like for you?
That is a very painful point that you're bringing up. So let's get real. So I will say, right, I started my business, I officially became an LLC in 2020. I looked back at that, it was actually Valentine's Day, which I was like, I don't even remember it being Valentine's Day. And I remember before I left, my colleague and friend said, just know because you're stepping out on your purpose, the enemy is going to come for you. And the day before my last day, I got my first right to know order, because I was working with the district and it was in the height of, people talking about book bans and all the things, and they made an assumption about me. So you talk about media literacy and my body being read as text. People make assumptions about what I look like, and they think I'm queer, they think all these things about me. So they made an assumption in this district, and they thought she's introducing this district to queer books. And never had a conversation, didn't know any of my work, and just railroaded me. And so that was very painful, where I thought, let me just go back to where it's easy. I don't have to deal with that front-facing thing. And I think that happens a lot, and I would not have gotten through it without family and people that encouraged me to stay with it. But that was very painful. So those things can creep up. And I think it's very hard, particularly being a woman and being a Black woman, it's that we talk about this with men. Again, I see it like I'm generalizing, that they can walk into a room and say, this is how much I'm charging. And women can struggle with that, being like, I don't really want to put this number on the table. And I'm like, put it on the table. So I remember reading a book, Rachel Rogers. She wrote a book, and it was talking about being a black woman and the intersections and the history behind it. And I loved it. And then she said in there, put the number on the table. She's like, double your rate and leave it on the table. And I was like, what? Like in the book, I'm reading this. And she's like, double it and put it on the table, because when you lowball yourself, what happens is people are like, I mean, it's cute and all. They don't really believe in your work, but give them something to really be like, ooh, do I really want to invest in this? And that has been really hard model, but I'll say you have to have mentors that know the business model, and you take what you need, but when you're out here trying to fend for yourself, there's a scarcity mindset, particularly among people that are marginalized, that there can only be one of us in the room. And so you have to find people who are willing to speak your name in the room. And I had people in positions that say they would want them to do the work, and they say, you know what? That's not my skill set, but Dr. Sessoms. And you don't have enough people in this work willing to do that, because I think part of it is growing up in a homogenous area that we feel like, and the way the world is that we only need one black woman, we need one black male, we need one Latinx, like we only need one of you to speak for the whole race. And instead of looking at me as my entire race, look at my skill set, look what I offer, but oftentimes it's read as that. So they just think I'm the DEI person. I never, ever said that in any of my work. They just made an assumption. I said, I actually am a school psychologist. And but that's what people think. So I think getting away from that and being true to yourself and having people that will speak your name in the room and not think it's taking something away from you, knowing what you're good at and staying in that and growing in that instead of trying to do all the things. And that takes growth and that takes learning. But I think being in those type of environments where you can say, this didn't work out, and talking to people about it, like, can I talk to you honestly? Right. But it's really hard to find people like that. So if you know any, Jordan, it would be great to start those incubators. And I know there's people here doing that work, which is really helpful, but it is rare to find people that are willing to speak life and to say, it's not taking anything more. I see a skill set in you, I see something in you, and it doesn't mean I'm less than. I can shine over here, you can shine, we can shine together, instead of, oh, I got to hate on you and pull you down. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the answer. As much as I wish we had all the time in the world to ask all of my questions, because I do have so many more that we just
and I don't like to look at questions, but I was like, oh, these are good. These are good questions. Y'all did your work.
I wish I could ask all of the questions that I have before me here, but for the sake of time, I do want to end with an inspirational question, because I love tying things back to our scholars. They're at the root of what we do. If you could leave young people who are maybe trying to find their passion, trying to navigate their way with their passions and make it work for them, if you could leave them with one thought, some little piece of inspiration that they can carry with them long after today, what do you think that you would hone in on?
My own chicken nugget wisdom.
Your chicken nugget wisdom, no sauce needed.
Emma doesn't need sauce. I might need a little sauce. I don't know. We'll see. The own wisdom, I think it's that self-interrogation. And so I'll have people say, I don't know how you take that and you try to unpack it for yourself, but it's really what makes you come alive, and that's hard for people. I'll say that to I said it to an older person, a young adult, and they started crying because they had zero idea.
Wow.
But you're worth figuring that thing out. Yeah. So for me, it's what is that thing? You're in that flow state. Time just passes. Can you get curious about that thing and what could that lead to? I'm not even talking in terms of how can you monetize that, but just getting curious enough about that gets you on your path.
Yeah.
But again, we're so distracted by things, we don't get curious enough about our own interior world. So that thing I love, that 2 hours pass and I've been doing that thing. What is that? Can I tap into that? Getting curious about yourself instead of always focusing on others. I might be speaking to myself is one of the biggest blessings I think in this work. Is man, do I know myself? How do I get to know myself better? How do I love myself more fully?
Thank you so much. Well, we've appreciated having you here in the studio so much. Your answers have been super insightful, and I have got chicken nugget wisdom I will carry with me long after today.
I do a spicy, hot and spicy or sweet and spicy sauce. Okay.
I'm a yum yum sauce person myself.
I've never had yum.
The sweet Asian sauce.
A yum yum sauce.
We will talk about that.
I had yum yum broth, but not yum yum sauce. Okay, y'all gonna have to tell me where to get that.
Yeah. Oh, and there's a specific brand because some of them taste like Thousand Island. So
Thousand Island.
I know those are the gross ones. But yeah. Well, thanks everybody for coming to our episode today. We've really, really appreciated your time.
Thank you.
And we'll see y'all in the next one.